So Standard Media Index is unique in the sense that we aggregate probably the largest amount of ad spend data in the industry. We currently have about $90 billion of media spend across all channels. And our focus is really to provide ad intelligence to both the buy and the sell side on spend, in particular trends, especially coming out of 2020, where there was a tremendous amount of shifting of dollars. A lot of clients are interested in understanding how those shifts are impacting their business, what areas are growing, whether it's from a ad category level or whether it relates to media channels. Obviously, the ad market was a tough year for the ad market, but when you really drill down, you can see that really pockets of growth, digital in general, but then in particular, digital video. So a lot of it is uncovering those insights for clients so that they can act on them, whether it has to do with how they sell their inventory or how you can optimize things on the buy side. And in addition to spend intelligence, we also have much more granular version of that for pricing. So we spend a lot of time on that as well.
So how do you help people understand the relationship between pricing and outcome?
It's a great question. I mean, the first and most important is to provide accurate spending data. Unlike other options in the marketplace that are modeled or take averages, ours is actually accurate down at the placement level, which is really important when you're looking at things like doing a share of spend analysis, or in the case of attribution, if you want to be able to benchmark a particular client's attribution results with that of a competitor, being able to pull in competitive spend data that's accurate is really important, because obviously it factors into ROI. And if the competitive spend is overstated, it can make competitive attribution look worse than it is. And if it's understated, it can make it look better. So we find, especially now that pricing data is being applied in a much more granular way towards things like attribution, accuracy is essential. And that's really kind of the cornerstone to the data set that we sit on.
So Ben, just a further explanation, if you would. You have the pricing data, but how do you close the loop on what actually the outcome is, and what sources do you use, and how do you use that in reporting, or how do your clients use that?
So great question. So just to clarify, we don't actually perform attribution. We leave that to all the experts in the business. What we provide is a competitive lens on attribution, namely competitive spending data. So let's just say that client X, let's say Target or Walmart, wanted to run an attribution study. Obviously, they have their own spend data and they have their own transactional data. What they don't have is the ability to benchmark their performance against the competitors. And what's essential in order to do that is an accurate view on competitive spend. So that's where we come in. What we do is augment attribution work with competitive spend information, so that a client, whether it's a measurement company or a brand themselves, gets a line of sight on what the competitive spend is in order to look at their ROI relative and in comparison to their own. So again, it's the spend data, competitive spend data that we provide that's an add-on to the attribution work that companies perform in the marketplace today.
So Ben, tell us about maximizing ROI around inventory management. Who needs to manage inventory? What are the challenges, and how do you help?
So the challenges are many. I think a lot, especially with our network clients, that have been really aggressive in pushing out OTT services. Now they have inventory across all platforms, and each platform is somewhat unique in terms of how it's priced and how it's bought and sold. So with OTT in particular, should pricing mirror conventional linear, or should it be more geared around digital pricing? I think that's one of the things that's happening in the marketplace today is, a different view on OTT inventory and how it should be priced. In some cases, you could argue that it should be priced higher than linear because of the targetability and the measurability of it. So, but I think where we play a role in that is to get an accurate categorization of pricing so that it's reflective of that channel. Because historically, in the last couple of years, what we've seen is OTT spend data could fall underneath digital video, it could fall underneath linear. So only until you break it out do you get a real clear view of what the true pricing is. So in the last few months, we've spent a lot of time rolling out a new categorization of OTT that would allow us to be able to pull the spend data and allocate it accurately against over the top, so it's not blended in with digital video. And when you do that, you can see that OTT clearly commands a premium, and that premium varies based on the type of OTT it is, whether it's a pure play service like a Vivo or a Pluto, or whether it's a network-based OTT service like Peacock or Discovery Plus. So a lot of what we provide is intelligence around accurate pricing based on the specific ad channel. In this case, differentiating between digital video and OTT.
Now you've been looking at that. You've been doing some surveys, some research. What have you been finding around OTT?
Yeah, so most of the work that we do is literally taking the census data that we have. So we don't, have qualitative research to understand pricing. We're literally inspecting, the equivalent of $90 billion worth of, advertising point of sale data. So it's literally $90 billion of billing data. And the first thing that we'll do is just make sure that the taxonomy and the categorization is accurate. Like I said before, that OTT is separated out from digital video, isn't bundled in with linear. So the first step is getting that taxonomy right. And then the next step is drawing insights from the data. So the most recent byproduct of that work is an OTT report that we published late last year that we're actually releasing this week, which provides spend and kind of ad market stats around OTT. Which categories of advertising are gravitating most? How does the spend vary? Who are the top publishers? And what is the spend trend coming out of last year going into this year, which is really important just because we saw, digital video and OTT in particular growing at a pretty significant rate while every other channel was either flat to down. So a lot of the insights now are drawn on how is that trending continue, which categories of advertisers are gravitating most to the medium.
And finally, Ben, tell us sort of what the value is that the buyers want to see about pricing. Is it what they're paying? Is it the competitors? What are buyers? I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of use cases for the data, but what are some key expectations and uses of the data by the buy side?
I think, you hit on most of the use cases. It's really around benchmarking. So looking at price across a number of different dimensions. And I think what's the most important with pricing is making sure that you're comparing apples to apples. What we found is that only until you kind of dissect what goes into a CPM do you really understand the true value. So to what extent was first-party data used for targeting? Was it behavioral targeting versus audience-based targeting? Was the ad unit, is it mirrored in terms of the format of that unit? Because all of this data is contained in the billing information that we receive, we're able to itemize that out. So the use case is benchmarking, price benchmarking. How are my rates relative to our agency pool, broadly, or how do my rates compare on a publisher to publisher level? But the most important thing is comparing and benchmarking based on a true apples to apples. And that's where a lot of the granularity in our data can be helpful. Because we can get a true match and allow clients to do an apples to apples comparison to see where the yield opportunity is.
Ben, so tell us about sort of the imperative for competitive analysis, particularly in this fragmented world. And let's talk about the needs of the publishers, of the networks, to understand what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it's a great question. These days, the networks, not only face competition amongst themselves, but, as consumption behavior has changed and audiences are gravitating to new digital properties, there's a whole lineup of new digital competitors that are kind of in the premium video / OTT space. So, and that's one of the areas that we can really help arm them with like real deep insight into the types of advertisers that are gravitating to those platforms and how their market share is evolving and changing, and what the opportunities are for them as they launch new OTT services. We spent a lot of time with that today, and I think that's an area that's going to continue to grow in interest, as more and more services hit the marketplace.